Hold out your hand for me, right now, wherever you are. Put one finger up and look at the very tip of it. Now picture the smallest pinch of matter you can imagine, a speck barely big enough to balance there. Nothing special, a crumb of dust. Here's what nobody ever tells you. That speck holds enough energy to light a whole city for a day, or, if it all got out at once, enough to flatten one.
And the maddening thing is, you already own the answer. You've seen it 1,000 times. On a mug, a tote bag, a gift shop t-shirt. The most famous equation there is. You can probably recite it in your sleep, and I'd wager almost nobody has ever told you what it actually says.
Oh, but this is the 1 week I've got you. This is the episode I've been waiting for, because, for once, everybody knows this one. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. It's practically wallpaper. Honestly, what's left? You've said the thing. Roll the credits.
Then say it back to me. Not the words, the meaning. Energy equals mass times what? The speed of light multiplied by itself. Lovely. Now tell me what that sentence is claiming about the cold cup of coffee sitting on your table right now.
It's claiming that the cup has energy. If I lift it, sure, moving things have energy. If I heat the coffee back up, there's energy in the warmth.
Sitting still. Stone cold. Going nowhere. Not moving. Not warm. Not doing a single thing you could point at. Has it got energy then?
No. A cold cup on a table isn't doing anything. That's sort of the whole definition of a cold cup on a table. If it was secretly holding some enormous energy, I feel like I'd have noticed by now. It'd at least buy me a coffee.
That's the wallpaper talking, and that's the exact thing the t-shirt never breathes a word about. Because the honest answer is yes. That cold, still, thoroughly boring cup is loaded. Absolutely loaded. So is your fingertip. So are you. And the part that ought to genuinely nag at you tonight is that nothing has to happen for it to be true. No reaction, no spark, no motion at all. It's just sitting there, right now, being quietly, enormously loaded, and giving no sign of it whatsoever.
Okay, that landed somewhere in my stomach, and I don't love it. Walk me in. Slowly, because I need to understand how a crumb I can't even feel lights up a whole city. Because either you're pulling my leg for sport, or the most ordinary things in the world are secretly the most extraordinary. And right now, honestly, I cannot tell which.
We start with the sentence itself because everyone garbles it. The equation does not say that mass and energy are two different things you can swap, like trading dollars for euros at some booth, at some fixed rate. That's the usual mental picture, and it's simply wrong.
That is exactly my mental picture, though. Mass on one side, energy on the other. And the speed of light part is the exchange rate the universe charges. You're telling me that's wrong?
It's the friendly lie we all tell ourselves. What the equation really says is stranger and simpler at once. Mass and energy aren't two things with a rate between them. They're one thing. Wearing two coats.
One thing wearing two coats. So mass and energy are, what, literally the same thing? Not two things that behave alike or convert into each other or share some family resemblance. The actual identical same thing. And I only ever believed there were two because somebody handed me two different words for it in school.
Literally. Mass is energy. Energy is mass. What we call the mass of an object is just how much energy is bundled up inside it, sitting still. And what we call energy is that same stuff on the move or getting out. Not cousins, not trading partners, one substance, two names, depending only on how you happen to catch it. Catch it standing still and you call it mass and set it on a scale. Catch it on the move or breaking loose and you call it energy and feel it as heat or light on your skin. but it was never two substances taking turns. It was one the whole time, and the name only ever told you the mood you caught it in.
Then hang on, if they're truly the same thing, why does the equation need that huge speed of light squared bolted onto it? If a dollar is a dollar, why isn't it just energy equals mass and we're done?
Because the two coats are cut to wildly different sizes, and that number is the Taylor. It's the conversion between the units we invented for weight and the units we invented for energy. Back when we were certain the two had nothing to do with each other. To get from a little mass to the energy it's worth, you multiply by the speed of light, and then by the speed of light a second time.
Twice. And the speed of light is already the biggest speed there is. That was the whole of last week. Nothing outruns it.
Enormous, almost absurd. Light crosses the width of our world in a single heartbeat. Now take that already ridiculous number and multiply it by itself, and you get something so vast it stops meaning anything to a human head. That is the Taylor. That is why a pinch of mass is worth a city's worth of energy. You're multiplying the pinch by that monster, and then by the monster again.
Multiply by the biggest number there is, and then turn around and do it again. No wonder the answer comes out insane. But I don't want to just nod at insane. Give me the size of it in something my hands can hold.
Then hold this. The jolt in a swung hammer, the punch of a car at full speed, the blast of anything we'd ever call powerful. Set the whole lot side by side with the rest energy already asleep in the objects themselves, and it's a single candle held up beside the sun. The everyday world, every engine, every storm, runs entirely on the loose change. The real fortune just sits there and never has to move.
So the mass can be tiny, but the price per pinch is deranged.
Deranged is fair. A whisper of mass, cashed in fully, pays out a scream of energy, which is exactly why you can hold that fingertip's worth and feel nothing. It weighs next to nothing, and yet the energy accounted for inside it could run a city through the night. The weight, tiny. The energy the weight is worth, colossal. Same spec. Both true at once. That's the whole vertigo of it. Your hand tells you there's next to nothing there. The arithmetic tells you there's a catastrophe waiting inside. And both instruments are reading the very same spec, and both of them are right.
That is genuinely hard to sit with, because it means everything around me, this table, the cup, my own arm, is basically a battery I can't see and can't switch on. The chair, the wall, the water in the glass, all of it secretly humming with this locked-up fortune, and not one of them so much as flickering to let me in on the secret.
Careful. And this part matters, so let me strangle the get-rich-quick dream right here. Yes, the energy is in there. No, you cannot get at it. It isn't a battery with terminals you clip onto. For very nearly everything around you, that energy is locked up tight, welded shut, with no cheap door in.
So the fingertip line isn't a how-to.
Not remotely. It tells you how much is hiding. It is not a recipe for prizing it loose. There's no free lunch anywhere in this, and anyone who tells you they can hand you one off the back of this equation is selling you a fib. Hold the wonder, drop the wishful thinking.
Fine, I'm not quitting my job to mine my coffee cup, but that's the thing I actually can't get past, and I want to plant my feet on it. You keep saying the cup, sitting still, cold, has this energy just for existing. Where is it? What is it doing in there?
Now you've asked the real question, the one the t-shirt buried. And it comes with a name so dull-sounding it hides the most radical idea in the whole hour. We call it rest energy, the energy a thing carries purely for being. Not for moving, not for burning, just for having any mass at all.
Rest energy. Okay, sell me on why that's radical, because a thing has energy just for existing sounds like a line a magic candle delivers in a fantasy novel. Something inert, just lying there, secretly brimming with power. That's not physics, that's an enchanted object. So tell me why this is the real thing and not a fairy tale, because right now, honestly, the two of them sound identical to me.
Fair hit. So let me set it against the old picture. That's where you'll feel the ground move. Go back to Newton, the physics you were raised on, the physics that's right about very nearly everything you'll ever touch. In Newton's world, for a thing to have energy, it has to be doing something. Moving, falling, stretched, heated, spinning, charged up. Energy was a thing that flowed, that got spent, got stored, got handed on, and you could always trace it back to some doing. It was a verb, really, more than a noun. Nothing ever just sat there, quietly, being energetic all on its own.
Right, energy is always about action. A brick lying still on the floor has none. It's just a brick. That's not even physics, that's plain common sense. A rock on the ground is the very picture of nothing happening. If you'd told Newton that rock was secretly seething with energy, he'd have asked you what on earth it was doing. And the only honest answer would have been nothing whatsoever.
That's exactly what Newton would say. Still brick, no energy, nothing to see. 2 centuries of physics agreed with you and built bridges and engines on it and never lost a wink of sleep over it.
And they weren't being lazy about it either. That picture works. Drop a ball, it speeds up. That's energy of motion. Lift it back up onto a shelf and you've stored energy in where it sits. Energy always had to come from somewhere and be going somewhere. A brick just lying there came from nowhere and is going nowhere. Zero.
A flawless piece of reasoning. Every word of it true, right up until you ask the one question nobody thought to ask. Not, how much energy could this brick gain? But, how much has it already got, sitting there, before anything happens to it at all? Newton never asked it, because in his world, the answer was obviously nothing. Einstein asked it, and the answer that came back was thunderous.
And I'm bracing now because your voice just did the thing it does right before the floor gives out.
Then brace, because that still brick, doing nothing, going nowhere, cold as the tiles it sits on, is already crammed with energy, brimming with it. Far more energy asleep inside it than you could ever wring out by throwing it, or heating it, or smashing it. And it holds all that energy for one reason only, because it has mass, not because of anything it's doing, not because of anything ever done to it. It owns the energy the way it owns the mass, as a plain fact of being the thing it is. Find the coldest, deadest, most motionless object you can lay your hands on, the most utterly inert thing in the house, and it is already among the most energetic things in the room.
More than from throwing it? I could wind up and hurl that brick as hard as a human being physically can.
And the energy of your very best throw wouldn't amount to a rounding error beside what's already sitting inside it, dead still. That's the scale of it. All the drama we file under energy, explosions, engines, storms, lightning, that's the loose change. The small stuff rattling around on the surface. The real fortune is the rest energy, lying perfectly still underneath that nobody ever thought to count.
So every still object in this room is secretly the richest thing in it, and we just never opened the account. The dullest brick on the shelf is walking around with a fortune sewn into the lining of its coat, never mentions it, never spends a penny of it, and for 200 years, neither did we.
Never opened it. And here's the deep part, so let me lay it down slowly. Before Einstein, we kept 2 entirely separate books. One ledger for mass, how much stuff there is. A completely separate ledger for energy, how much action there is. 2 accountants, 2 books, never once speaking to each other.
And each one balanced on its own. Mass stayed put, energy stayed put. 2 rules kept in 2 rooms.
Newton's world exactly. Each book squared away on its own, and both of them airtight. Then Einstein walked in, read the two of them side by side, and realized they were the same book. The same account, written out twice in two different currencies. One column in the currency of weight, how much stuff there is. The other in the currency of energy, how much can happen. Two lists of numbers that had agreed with each other, penny, for 2 centuries, and nobody had ever stopped to ask why two supposedly unrelated ledgers would march in step so perfectly, forever, without a single disagreement.
Wait, the same book? So the mass ledger and the energy ledger weren't two things that happened to both balance. They were one thing, written down twice, and nobody caught it.
One thing, double-entered for 200 years, and nobody caught it. That's the earthquake, not some new force, not a new particle, a merger. Two of the most sacred, separate ideas in all of physics turned out to be a single idea wearing two names.
I want to feel the weight of that because you keep saying it lightly and it does not sound light. Two laws, mass is saved, energy is saved, that every scientist alive would have bet their life on. And they weren't two laws at all, they were one law, caught from two different angles.
One law, seen twice, and each half looked whole and complete on its own, because the everyday world never lets the two of them talk. Picture spending your entire life certain that heads and tails were two separate coins, kept in two separate pockets, and then, one afternoon, watching somebody flip the thing over in the air. Same coin, always was. You'd simply never once seen both faces at the same time.
So when you say rest energy, you mean the mass is the energy. The stuff of the brick and the energy of the brick aren't two things bundled together. They're the same reading of the same dial.
The same reading of the same dial. Put the brick on a scale and you have, without knowing it, measured its rest energy. You just used the old units and the old word. Every scale in every kitchen is secretly an energy meter. It's only labelled in grams because we invented weight long before we ever knew what weight was.
So my bathroom scale is quietly reading me my rest energy every single morning.
Every morning, cheerfully, in the wrong units. A number vast beyond all imagining, and it just blinks up at you and says, maybe lay off the biscuits. That's the joke buried in the whole business. We were staring straight at the energy of the world the entire time and calling it weight.
All right, let me push because a decent skeptic should. How do we actually know the still brick has all this locked-in energy if we've just agreed we can't get it out of an ordinary brick? Invisible energy you can't access is exactly the sort of thing a con man invents.
A fair challenge, and it deserves a straight answer, not a wink. We know because when we do manage to spring a little of it loose, in the right kind of reaction, the energy that comes pouring out matches, to the letter, the exact bit of mass that goes missing. Weigh it before, weigh it after, something's lighter, and precisely that much energy has shown up, as light and heat and motion.
So the weight that vanished and the energy that appeared are two halves of one receipt.
One receipt, signed on both ends. It isn't a story we tell to sound clever. It's a measurement, made over and over, that always crosses out the same. The missing weight and the freed energy are never off by a hair. Not roughly, not usually. Every single time anyone has ever checked, the two sums land dead level. The weight that leaves and the energy that arrives turn out to be two readings of one and the same event. That is not the sort of coincidence you get to have, even twice by luck, let alone every time forever. That's how you know the energy was really in there, sleeping all along.
So we've actually caught it in the act. Small, careful, but real. A pinch of mass gone. Exactly its worth in energy turning up in its place. And that's the same trade, just tiny, that my fingertip is holding a monstrous version of.
The very same trade, the fingertip is just the whole bill, never yet called in. Every time we free a little, the exchange comes out exact, to the last decimal we can check. Which is how a careful, unfoolable person travels all the way from "here is a strange equation" to "your fingertip could light a city," without ever once taking it on faith. You follow the small, honest measurements, and they force the enormous conclusion on you, whether you like it or not.
Okay. That genuinely rearranges a shelf in my head. A still thing isn't empty. It's the fullest thing there is.
The fullest thing there is, and the quietest about it. And there's one more twist to the rest energy before we move on. A small one that happens to pay off something you're still sore about from last week.
Oh, I'm extremely sore about last week. You had me shoving on the speed limit like an idiot, pushing and pushing on something to get it up near light speed, and it barely gained a whisker. And then you just smiled and said, "Next time." So, where did all my effort go?
Here's the full accounting, at last. The total energy of any object is two things added together. There's the rest energy, what it owns simply for having mass, sitting still. And on top of that, the ordinary energy of its motion, the energy of actually moving. Total energy is the rest energy plus the motion energy. Still, and you've got only the first. Moving, and you've stacked the second on top. And that's the whole shape of it. Nothing exotic, nothing tucked away. What a thing is worth, in energy, is what it holds simply for existing, plus whatever extra it has earned by getting up and moving. The first part nobody ever noticed because it never changed. The second part was the only one Newton ever needed to count, and so it was the only one he ever named.
Fine, that sounds almost sensible. Resting energy plus moving energy. Where's the catch? There's always a catch with you.
The catch is what happens when you push something faster and faster, up toward light speed. You pour in effort, real work, real energy, expecting it to come back to you as speed, the way it always did on a bicycle. But near the limit, the speed barely creeps. So ask the honest question. Where is your energy going?
Right, that's the exact thing that drove me up the wall. It's not coming back as speed. But it can't just be vanishing. You drilled that into me for weeks. Energy doesn't vanish.
It doesn't. It's piling straight into the object's energy account anyway, just not as speed. It's going in as energy of motion. That bucket just keeps filling and filling, even while the speed barely climbs. And energy, remember, has heft. So the very thing you're pushing is, little by little, getting heavier under your hands. Not because you're bolting extra stuff onto it. You're not adding a single brick, not one scrap of new matter. You're adding energy, and energy digs in against a push exactly the way mass does. The object resists you harder because you've made it, in the only sense that actually counts here, more than it was.
Heavier, as in harder to push?
Harder and harder to push. That's what the extra energy shows up as, sheer stubbornness. The more energy you've stacked in there, the more it digs in its heels against the next shove. Energy has heft. It resists being moved, exactly the way mass does, because it is mass. So you stop buying speed, and you start buying pure resistance. It's the worst bargain in the universe, and it curdles the more you spend. Early on, a good shove buys you a decent chunk of speed. Later, that same shove buys a sliver. Later still, almost nothing at all, the whole payment vanishing into weight, into stubbornness, instead of into pace.
Oh, that's diabolical. It's a trap that tightens the harder you pull. The more I push, the heavier it gets, so I have to push even harder, which makes it heavier still.
And the final step, the one that would actually touch light speed, would demand an endless, bottomless supply of energy. Not a great deal of it, not an enormous amount, a truly unlimited amount, which nobody in the universe has. That is the honest reason a thing with mass can never reach light speed. not a wall it smacks into, a bill that grows faster than you could ever pay it.
So my effort last week didn't get wasted. It got stored. It turned into the very thing that was fighting me.
It turned into energy, bundled into the object, showing up as that swelling refusal to be pushed one notch faster. Every ounce of effort you spent is still there, sitting inside the thing as extra energy, as extra heft. You weren't failing to move it, you were feeding it.
Feeding it. So the shove didn't turn into speed, it turned into more of the thing itself, more heft, more stubbornness, more of exactly what was already resisting me. I was fattening up my own opponent with every push.
Every push made it a heavier thing to push. And that is the quiet horror of the speed limit. It isn't guarded by a wall you could take a run at and ram. It's guarded by the plain fact that the nearer you get, the more the next step costs, with no ceiling on the price. The limit defends itself, out of your own effort. You bring the bricks, the wall builds itself higher.
And that circles right back to what you said before. Energy has heft. Energy resists like mass does, because energy just is mass. It's the same idea coming round again through a different door.
The same idea, coming round from the far side. Pour energy into anything, and in a real and literal sense, you've made it weigh a touch more. Because you've added to its energy and mass are the one thing. A hot cup is heavier than a cold one. A wound-up spring heavier than a slack one. A spinning top heavier than a still one. Energy in means weight up.
A hot cup actually weighs more than a cold cup, by an amount I will never, ever measure. But really, I am going to be insufferable about this at breakfast.
Really? By an amount so preposterously small it's hopeless to weigh. Because that monstrous conversion number runs the other way too. A vast amount of energy answers to a laughably tiny scrap of mass. So everyday energies barely nudge the scale at all. That is precisely why nobody caught it for centuries. The effect was always there. It was just hiding under its own smallness. Turn the number the other way, and you see why. To make a thing measurably heavier just by heating it, you'd have to pour in a genuinely monstrous flood of energy, because energy comes so cheap in the currency of weight. So on a stovetop, the effect is perfectly real and perfectly invisible. You'd need the conditions inside a star before it ever stepped out where you could see it.
So Newton wasn't wrong about the ordinary world. The ordinary world just hides this almost perfectly.
Almost perfectly. At the speeds and energies of ordinary life, keeping mass and energy in two separate books gives you the right answer every single time, to more decimal places than you could ever check. Newton's world isn't a lie. It's a magnificent approximation, with one quiet assumption baked into it, that mass is one thing and energy is another, and each one is saved on its own.
And let me guess, that quiet little assumption is the one that's about to blow up.
In the most spectacular way there is. Because that assumption, mass, saved on its own, is the very thing that fails the moment you stop rearranging the world and start truly transforming it.
Okay, you've been circling this missing weight thing for a while now, and I can feel it's the main event. Stop circling. Hit me.
Here's the belief I have to take off you first, and you've held it your whole life, and it feels like bedrock under your feet. You were taught, everyone's taught, that matter can't be created or destroyed. That stuff is stuff. Weigh everything before, weigh everything after, and the total mass always comes out the same. Nature's one unbreakable rule of bookkeeping.
Yes, conservation of mass. That's the first grown-up thing you learn in a science class. You can burn it, dissolve it, smash it, rearrange it. But the total weight you started with equals the total weight you end with. The atoms just shuffle their seats around.
It's a beautiful rule, and it is not quite true. Let things really react, genuinely transform, not just reshuffle, and the total mass afterward can come out honestly less than what you started with. Not floated off as an invisible gas, not stuck to the walls of the jar. Actually, truly, gone.
Gone? You're telling me weight can just stop being there? That's the one rule I actually trusted. That's the flaw under the whole house.
It breaks that rule, yes. Mass, all on its own, is not conserved. That old law is only ever an approximation, a superb one for a bonfire and useless for a star. But nothing is truly lost. The missing mass didn't fall into nowhere. It left as energy. It streamed out as light, as heat, as motion. Weigh the ashes and they come up lighter, and precisely that missing weight is out there in the room now, as warmth. Sit with how strange that sentence is. You could, in principle, weigh a sealed thing with exquisite care, let it truly transform inside, and weigh it again, and find you are holding less than you began with. Not spilled, not leaked, converted, gone off as light and heat, and the scale itself would quietly tell you so.
That genuinely unsettles me, and I don't think you want me to shake it off. The one thing I was sure the universe would never do, lose count of its own stuff, it does, casually, all the time.
It does, and you shouldn't shake it off too fast. Because most of the comforting things you were told about matter, that it's permanent, that there's a fixed amount of it, that you could, in principle, tally it all up, and it would always come out the same, none of those are laws of nature. They're habits of a slow, cold world where the change is far too small to catch anyone's eye. Heat the world enough, drive it hard enough, and the habits quietly fall away, and you meet what was true underneath the whole time.
So the law isn't wrong, it's just half the picture. Mass by itself isn't saved. But if I also count the energy that walked out the door, does it balance again?
That's the whole repair, and it's gorgeous. There is still a law. There is still something nature never, ever lets change. It just isn't mass, and it isn't energy of motion, each on its own. It's the grand total of all energy, with the rest energy of the mass counted in. Add up everything, the mass cashed into its energy worth, plus all the light and heat and motion, and that total is the same before and after. Always. Nature never abandoned its bookkeeping. It simply keeps a wider book than we ever knew. Mass was only ever a single line item in it. The moment you let the rest energy of the mass count as energy, sitting right there alongside the heat and the light and the motion, the grand total goes rigid. It will not budge. That one number is the thing the universe truly, fiercely guards.
So the mass books don't balance.
The mass books don't balance. The full energy books always do. The scandal resolves itself the very moment you agree to count the light.
So this is, genuinely, the universe's greatest accounting scandal. For 200 years, the mass ledger looked airtight, everything adding up, everyone happy. And it turns out somebody was quietly carrying weight off the books, out the back door, dressed as sunlight. And the only reason the totals still work is that there was a second set of books nobody thought to open.
And the beautiful part is, that second set was never hidden to cheat anyone. It was hidden because the entries in it are so enormous. Weigh any object, and the rest energy written on that page is a fortune. But it just sits there, never changing, so nobody ever thought to call it energy at all. It shows its hand only on the day a little of it gets up and moves.
So the books looked balanced because that huge still number on the mass page never seemed to do anything. It just sat there being weight, right up until a sliver of it stood up and walked out the door as light.
And the auditor who finally caught it was Einstein. The mass ledger was never being falsified, it simply was never the real ledger. It was a partial view. Everyone had been auditing the petty cash and calling it the whole company. The true books, total energy, had balanced all along. We just never found the page where mass and energy are written in the same column.
So it really is one thing, all the way down. Even the disappearing weight isn't disappearing. It's the same energy, changing which pocket it sits in.
Changing pockets. That's it exactly. And this is where I want to nail the language, because the popular phrase is a little sloppy and it's worth tightening. People say mass turns into energy, as if lead were becoming gold. Nothing so magical. Mass and energy were the same thing the whole time. What actually happens is that some of the energy bound up as mass, sitting still, gets released to go and be energy on the move.
So it's less lead into gold and more the same money moving out of a savings account I can't touch into cash in my hand.
Out of locked savings into spendable cash. Same money, different account. That's a clean way to hold it, and crucially, it runs both ways. You can also take energy on the move and lock it up as new mass, sitting still. Soak up enough energy and a thing can come out heavier than the parts that went into it. The traffic isn't one way. Weigh the ingredients, drive enough energy into them, weigh the result, and the result can tip the scale further than the plain sum of its parts, because you've paid for the extra with energy, and energy shows up as weight. Both directions of the trade are real, and both keep the grand total honest.
Both directions, okay. I'm going to make you come back to that, because it smells like it's going somewhere enormous. But first, I want a real example, not a chalkboard. Where does this actually happen out in the world, somewhere I can point at? Something I could, in principle, walk right up to and say, there, that, right there, is mass turning into energy while I stand here and watch it.
Step outside on a clear day and point straight up. You've been staring at the example your whole life. The sun is the biggest, oldest, most patient demonstration of every single thing I've just told you. And it's been running, quietly, over your head, since long before there was anyone here to look up at it. You never needed a laboratory for this one. You needed a window. The proof has been pouring down on the top of everybody's head, every clear day, the whole time.
The sun. I'll be honest, I don't think I've ever actually known what the sun is doing up there. I know it's hot, I know it's sort of on fire.
It isn't on fire. That's the first thing to let go of. Fire, a log, a candle, a struck match, is chemistry. Atoms swapping partners, shuffling their seats. It's the loose change kind of energy, all of it on the surface. If the sun were a bonfire, even a sun-sized bonfire, made of the finest fuel you could dream up, it would have burned out and gone dark ages and ages ago. Whatever the sun is doing, it is not burning. Burning is a shallow, hungry business. It eats its fuel fast, and it eats a great deal of it. The sun has been a light far beyond any span a fire could manage on any fuel you could ever stack inside it. Whatever keeps it going has to be something deeper and far, far more sparing with itself than a flame.
Then what? What's actually going on down in the middle of it?
Deep in the core, under a crush and a heat you can't really picture, the smallest bits of matter get squeezed so hard that they merge. Little pieces of stuff pressed together until they join into bigger pieces. And here is the whole trick, the thing this entire hour has been walking toward. What comes out of that merging weighs a hair less than what went in. Add up the little pieces before they join, then weigh the single bigger piece they become. The bigger piece is very slightly lighter than the whole crowd that made it. Not because anything spilled on the way, nothing spilled. The difference simply isn't there in the form of weight anymore.
There it is, the missing weight, again.
There it is again. And where does that missing weight go? It streams out as light. Every single merge down in that core sheds the tiniest sliver of weight, and that sliver leaves as energy, and it climbs its slow way up out of the sun and crosses the empty dark and lands on your face on a summer afternoon. The sunlight warming your skin is, quite literally, weight the sun used to have.
So the sun isn't burning fuel at all. It's on a diet. It's just very slowly shedding weight, and the weight it drops is the sunshine. That's what daylight is. It's the sun getting lighter. Every sunrise is the thing stepping on the scale and coming up a touch lighter than the day before, and handing us the difference as the morning.
The most consequential diet in the history of everything. Every moment, the sun turns a little of its own body into light and lets it fly. It's been doing exactly this, steadily, patiently, for longer than the ground under your feet has existed, and it will keep on for longer still. Not a fire eating fuel, a vast, slow, gentle trade of weight for light. It shines by getting lighter, one heartbeat at a time.
One heartbeat at a time. For how long, though? Because steadily shedding weight and, still up there shining, have to be pulling against each other at some point.
They barely pull against each other at all, and that's the marvel of it. The trade is so miserly, so little weight bought for so much light, that the sun has been at it since before the oldest thing you could name, has spent only a sliver of its whole self doing it, and has a long, long road still ahead of it. And here's a small thing to sit with. The light landing on your windowsill left the core of the sun a very long time before it ever reached your eye. When you feel that warmth, you're being warmed by an old, old gift.
And it's a tiny slice of itself, presumably, or it'd have wasted away to nothing by now.
A staggeringly tiny slice. Because of that same monstrous number, a mere sliver of weight buys a flood of light beyond all reckoning. The sun can pour out everything we see and feel, warm every world circling it, and barely dent its own bulk across the whole long age of our planet. That's the mercy of the arithmetic. A little weight, an ocean of light. It can afford to be this generous precisely because mass is worth so much energy.
So, all of it, the warmth, the daylight, the seasons, the whole green, growing world.
All of it. Every leaf that has ever unfurled did it by catching that light. Every green and growing thing is running, right now, on weight the sun gave up. And everything that eats the green things, and everything that eats those, every creature that has ever drawn a breath, you included, has been fed, all the way down the line, by the sun quietly turning its own weight into light. That equation you thought was only t-shirt wallpaper, it's the reason there's anyone alive to wear the shirt. Every meal you've ever eaten traces back, sooner or later, to a scrap of the sun's own weight, set loose as light, caught by something green, and handed up the long chain of the living, mouth to mouth. You're not merely warmed by it. In the end, you're built out of what it let go.
I don't think I'm ever going to look at a sunny day the same way again. That isn't a fact about a star, that's a fact about lunch, about every lunch there's ever been, every field, every orchard, every animal that ever grazed a hillside, all of it, downstream of one star quietly losing weight. I asked you for a single example I could point at, and you pointed at the thing that grows the food.
Every lunch there's ever been. And notice what the sun quietly settles for us, because it kills the last little doubt. This isn't a chalkboard idea you have to take on trust. Walk outside and the proof is falling on your face. Steady, dependable, older than the oceans. The most famous equation in the world isn't a curiosity behind glass in a museum. It's the thing keeping the lights on. The actual lights.
Okay, I'm sold. I'm slightly emotional. I've had a small crisis about sandwiches. But you made me park something, and I am not letting you leave without it. Both directions. Mass into energy. Fine, the sun does it, I've made my peace. You said energy can go back into mass. That's the one I still can't picture.
Good, because that is the door out of this whole season, and I've been saving it for last. If mass can become energy, then the equation, being an equal sign, honest in both directions, has to run the other way too. Energy can become mass. And it does. Take two little bits of matter and hurl them at each other hard enough. Pour in enough energy of motion, and out of that smash can spring brand new bits of matter. Things that were simply not there before.
Wait, brand new? Not the pieces broke and smaller bits fell out. Actual new matter that didn't exist a moment before the crash. Because those are wildly different claims. One is a walnut cracking open and the halves rolling out. The other is a walnut simply appearing on the table, conjured out of the sound of the crack.
Genuinely new. Not chips knocked off the old blocks, created. Made on the spot out of raw energy. The energy of the collision freezes into fresh matter, the way steam can freeze into frost on a cold window. Except what's condensing here isn't water, it's stuff itself. Existence setting like frost.
Hold on, let me make sure I've got the shape of it. On the sun, matter loses a sliver of weight and pays it out as light. And here you're running that very same trade in reverse. Light, energy, motion, all coming together and settling down into weight that walks around afterward.
The identical trade, played backwards. The sun turns a little of its weight into light. A hard enough collision turns a little light, a little raw energy, back into weight. Same equation, same equals sign, simply read from the other end. Once you've truly let yourself believe the sun, you're not allowed to refuse this. It's the same single sentence, spoken the other way round.
That is astonishing. And you're telling me that's not some wild edge case that really routinely happens? Because everything in me wants to file this under true in some exotic corner of the universe I'll never visit. And I've got a strong feeling you're about to tell me it's a good deal closer to home than that.
It's the daily bread of the places where we crash matter together on purpose to see what tumbles out. Pour in energy, harvest new particles. Ordinary as weather. Not a freak event that turns up once in a blue moon under impossible conditions. A thing we can set up deliberately and count on, and watch spill brand new matter out of nothing at all but the sheer ferocity of the collision. And now the other direction, which is stranger still. Matter going all the way back to pure energy. Completely. Every scrap of it.
Completely? Nothing left behind at all? No ash, no smoke, no little pieces skittering off into a corner, nothing whatsoever, where two perfectly solid things were standing not a moment ago. That's the part I can't quite make my head hold.
Nothing at all. Here's the eerie part. For the ordinary matter you're built from, there exists a kind of mirror opposite, a sort of anti-version of the very same thing. And if a piece of matter ever meets its mirror opposite, they don't collide, they don't bounce off. They vanish, both of them wholly gone, and in the space where they were, a flash of pure light, carrying off every last bit of the energy they were ever worth.
Not most of it, all of it. So a scrap of matter meeting its mirror opposite is the most complete transaction there is. Everything they are, every bit, cashed straight out as light.
Everything cashed out, nothing left on the table. It's the purest demonstration of the whole idea. Mass all the way over to energy, with no remainder at all. The sun only ever nibbles a sliver off the top of its ingredients. This spends the entire thing. And run it backwards, energy setting into brand new matter and its mirror opposite, born together as a pair. And you've started with pure energy and ended up holding actual stuff. Energy on one side of the trade, brand new matter on the other, weight where a heartbeat before there was only motion. That's the door I keep pointing at. Matter dissolving completely into light, and light setting completely into matter, and through the whole exchange, in both directions, only the grand total of energy holding perfectly steady.
And one more time, because it's the kind of thing that sounds made up, this is not science fiction. This is a real, established, happens every single day fact.
As real and established as the sunlight on your face. It goes on constantly, in more places than you'd ever guess, including, very gently, inside your own body. matter freezing out of energy, matter melting back into energy. And that two-way trade, that open counter, stuff into light and light into stuff, is an entire hidden world. A whole layer of reality sitting underneath the one we've been touring all season. Everything we've done so far has been the physics of things that already exist. How they move, how they age, how fast they're allowed to go. Underneath it lies the physics of things coming into being and going out of it, made and unmade, out of nothing but energy. We've been walking the top floor all season. That is the basement.
And we are, I'm guessing, not walking through that door tonight.
Not tonight. That's a different journey altogether, going down inside matter itself, into the world where energy and particles swap places without a second thought, where the trade we just glimpsed is the ordinary weather. Tonight, I only wanted you to see that the door is real and standing open. Everything you've heard, the rest energy, the sun on its slow diet, the missing weight, all of it points straight through that door.
But we've got one last thing to do first. I can hear it in your voice. You've got that particular pause you always do, right before you hand me something I'm going to be chewing on all week.
One last thing. One final puzzle, and it's the famous one, the one people actually argue about over dinner. The one somebody who half remembers it brings up at the table and starts a row that nobody sitting there can quite finish. You've almost certainly heard it. I'd bet you've never once heard it settled.
Go on then. Before you send me off for the week, what's the puzzle?
Before I hand it to you, look at how far you've actually come this season. You started out certain that space was just space and time was just time, two separate things entirely. And piece by piece, week by week, we fused them into one fabric. We drew light's cone across it. We found the speed limit woven right into the world. And tonight, we welded mass and energy together too. The last two things you were dead sure were separate, turning out to be one.
When you line it all up like that, it's genuinely a lot. Space and time, one thing. Mass and energy, one thing. You've spent 7 weeks quietly gluing my whole universe back together. I walked into this season thinking physics was in the business of taking things apart, splitting the world into smaller and smaller pieces. And you've done the exact opposite the whole way through. Every single week, two things I was certain were separate turned out to be one.
And there's one seam left, one puzzle that ties it all off, and it's the one everybody's heard and almost nobody quite believes. Picture two twins, the same age, obviously, down to the minute. One of them climbs into a rocket and races off to a faraway star, and turns around and races all the way home. The other one just stays, waits, keeps the porch light on.
Right, twins. One travels, one stays. I feel like I already know where this goes, and also that you're about to ruin it for me.
Here's the trouble. When the traveller finally gets home, the two of them are no longer the same age. One has aged less than the other. Time itself ran differently for them, and that would be strange enough on its own. Except each of them, from where they were standing, is dead certain it's the other one who should have come back younger.
Wait, they can't both be right. If they meet up again standing in the same kitchen, one of them is physically younger. There's a fact of the matter. It's not a difference of opinion, one of them has fewer grey hairs than the other.
One of them, standing right there in the kitchen, is younger than their own twin. And that's not a riddle with a cheap trick answer. It really happens, and both of their points of view seemed airtight the whole way through, and yet only one of them comes home younger. How can motion alone reach into two identical lives and hand one of them more time than the other?
And you're not going to tell me tonight, are you? You're going to leave me standing in that kitchen, staring at two twins who are somehow different ages.
I'm going to leave you exactly there. Everything you've learned this season, the stretching of time, the shrinking of rulers, the speed limit, and now the energy asleep in mass. Every last piece of it comes together to settle who is younger, and why there's no contradiction hiding in it at all. But that's the finale. That one you get to sit with for a week.
So the whole series has been quietly building toward a family reunion where somebody's the wrong age.
The whole series has been building to exactly that. And when you see how it resolves, how both twins can be right the whole way along, and still only one of them comes home younger, that's the moment every piece we've collected clicks into a single picture. That's the reward for the whole climb.
All right, then I'll sit with it. 2 twins, 1 rocket, 1 porch light, and a reunion that shouldn't be possible. And a fingertip that could light a city, which I am apparently never going to be able to unsee. Next time, the finale, the twins.